So, hi Noe, great to have you here. My name is Antonio Patrus, and currently I'm the CFO of Bossa Nova Investimentos, which is currently the most active micro venture capital in Latin America. It is a great pleasure to be in this panel with you and be able to interview and listen to you from Salesforce Ventures today. Please introduce yourself, Noe.
Hi, Antonio. Super nice to be here. Very excited to be speaking about what we do at Salesforce Ventures and also learn more about kind of what you do. So I am based in London, part of Salesforce Ventures, joined in 2019 as a principal. And I lead EMEA investments across various geographies, as well as increasingly South America. Brazil is one of our growth regions. So really great to be here and talk more about software investing.
Great, great. So I would like to start our interview today with a little bit about Salesforce Ventures and its thesis. So this year alone, Bossa Nova has invested in more than 50 startups in Brazil and in the US. Bossa Nova's thesis is quite broad and agnostic. It is most based upon diversification and the search for great businesses that are scalable. Mostly our preferences is, as with Salesforce, B2B companies, SaaS model, which are earning revenue and in the path of break-even. And as I have seen, Salesforce is more focused on Series A, and we in Bossa Nova invest a little bit before in pre-seed and seed rounds. So please tell us a little bit more about Salesforce Ventures and its thesis.
Sure, happy to. And I think you're right, by the way, about our focus. But let me start off with basically an overall kind of view of the business. So we're the strategic investment arm of Salesforce, have been investing in companies for over 10 years. And our mission is essentially to invest in the most innovative cloud companies and founders globally in order to provide our customers with access to the best software solutions that are available. And over the years, we've been super lucky to partner with a lot of visionary founders that have built truly sort of class-leading, class-defining businesses, including the likes of Snowflake, Sneak, Hopin, and Process Street. In terms of our focus, you were right in saying that we start looking at businesses at the Series A stage. That's kind of our sweet spot across Series A, B, and C. And then we typically cooperate with other leading institutional VC firms. Our capital is really flexible in the sense that we have a very strong balance sheet. So we can write checks that are on the smaller side for an earlier stage company, but then follow on and write a larger checks. We really make sure that our portfolio companies are aligned with the Salesforce platform, given that we're obviously tied to that business. So every investment we make is sponsored by a Salesforce executive, whether from a specific product category, a specific cloud, or a customer segment. Because with that, we can really kind of rally the troops and make sure that it becomes a success because we view this as a partnership. So as I said, I'm based in London, working in the EMEA team. We started out with a team on the West Coast where we have about 7 people now. We have EMEA and then APAC, where we have people on the ground in both Sydney and Tokyo, where we help our portfolio companies drive geo expansion and connect them with global advisors as a large global business. Very briefly on sort of our track record, I think we've seen a lot of exits to both strategics, but also through IPO, about 95 acquisitions to date, 21 IPOs, and that number continues to increase. And lastly, what I touch on is that we lead with values. So philanthropy, diversity, and social responsibility is very important to us. So that is always included in our investment focus and process. A couple of examples. So we have our Pledge 1% initiative, which basically it's a pledge that people will invest 1% of their time, 1% of their profit to corporate social responsibility. And we have a lot of our portfolio companies that have actually taken this on board and are aligned with us, which is really great to see.
Wow, that's great. These are great numbers, and your track record is quite impressive. So, as you said, your investments are always validated or sponsored by Salesforce executives. So, when comparing corporate venture capital and the regular venture capital, mostly our belief here in Bossa Nova is that the major difference is the ultimate goals of each. While regular VCs will often be focused on earning expressive returns while developing the venture capital ecosystem, we see that corporate venture capitals have an agenda of forwarding internal innovation within the mother company. In your experience, Noe, what are the major differences of corporate venture capitals and regular venture capitals?
Yeah, I think that's right. And let me, I don't know what's happening here. Um, okay, sorry about
Cool.
that.
No problem.
So, in terms of the major differences between corporate venture capital and regular VCs, I think you're right in saying that institutional VC firms are really driven by returns, which makes sense, right? They get money from their limited partners and invest that with the goal of returning that money at a nice multiple. I think for us that applies as well. We do have like a focus on good returns because in the end, a successful company will drive high returns, right? But it's more than that, as you say. It's really about the strategic partnership that it comes in addition to financial returns. So we view the way we look at it things is we can create value for our portfolio companies as well as the Salesforce platform by providing access to an cloud ecosystem, which is in the case of Salesforce really big. That will then open up doors to our customers who are looking for innovation that Salesforce, even though we're a big business, cannot provide in all areas. And then lastly, it's about having or opening up that Salesforce exec network. A lot of people have previous founding or scaling experience in relevant businesses, which makes it a differentiated offering versus other VC firms. The one thing I will say is, it's really about driving mutual benefits or returns for both the portfolio company as well as the ecosystem. Because, as I said, a lot of our customers would like certain solutions that are not necessarily a core focus area for Salesforce. Hence, we try to leverage our ecosystem of portfolio companies to bring that innovation to them straight away.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a great strategy. So, Bossa Nova is constantly seeking opportunities to engage with corporate venture capitals to cooperate and invest together. When we are working with corporate venture capitals, as a venture capital, it always comes to us as an opportunity to demonstrate that such corporate venture capitals that engaging with a symbiotic relationship with a VC is always a win-win situation. Studies have demonstrated that when such a partnership is made, deals are cheaper, startups are better selected, exits happen quicker, and so on. Thus, Bossa Nova is always exchanging experience and information with corporate venture capitals and seeking these partnerships. In your opinion, Noe, what are the best practices for working with corporate venture capitals?
Yeah, I think it is, as you say, a very symbiotic relationship. Again, we're not looking to compete with your other investors. It's mainly like the value add and making sure that you get out of it what you're trying to get out of it right from the start. So in that sense, what I encourage entrepreneurs to do is be proactive. So in the case of a Salesforce, again, it's a very big platform, a lot of different divisions, a lot of different clouds. So you want to make sure that you focus on driving those relationships with the people that you think are going to add the most value, and trying to be proactive in engaging with them and asking the investment team, can you connect me with this or that person, this or that team, and then making sure that they actually connect you is I think is key here, is critical. It also goes the other way where you need to involve. What I believe in is a good practice is involve your corporate venture investor in your process. So when you're talking about the product roadmap, involve them early on such that they know what is going on and if there are any ways that they can help, because it will only get you to your goal much faster. And we understand that founders, they have to focus on growing the business, building new products. They have their own employees, and then they have their board and other investors involved. So it might not be like the number one key priority to keep your corporate investor, up to date all the time, but it does pay benefits, or you can reap the benefits by engaging with them and just sending them regular updates. I have a couple of our portfolio companies send me a monthly update about, hey, this is what we're doing. These are a couple of the things that we are currently working on. And there are certain areas, they list certain areas that that they're asking help for. And that is really, really helpful because they can actually say, hey, I'm looking to hire a person, say in marketing. If you have any ideas, let me know. And just involving your investors in that is always super helpful. Then lastly, I think it's about being very open and transparent. It's the relationship you have with your investors, all investors, is not necessarily. There will be difficult moments, right? And it can be about anything. It pays dividends to be really open and transparent about what is going on, what is on your mind, such that they know how to deal with it, and also can potentially provide support. And you'd be surprised about like a simple video call, telephone call. It opens a lot of doors. So never be hesitant to reach out when you're essentially in need of help.
I totally agree with you. Reporting is key. It often provides confidence and builds a relationship with the investor, helps with growing and with the future of fundraising for the startups. That's totally true. So changing the subject a little bit now, Noe, talking a little bit more about Salesforce. So the Salesforce App Exchange is the world's leading business application marketplace. Would you talk to us a little bit more about the concept of marketplaces, and in that matter, tell us how it is that one creates a funnel of independent software vendors?
Absolutely, and App Exchange is really one of our biggest success stories. It actually, I think it got started like very early on in the development of the Salesforce platform, and it goes back to really strongly believing in building an ecosystem. Again, we have our expertise in CRM, in service, in marketing cloud, etc. But there's a lot of innovation that you can build around those functional areas and beyond, because customers are actually demanding new innovation and new solutions. This is where marketplace comes in. And so Salesforce App Exchange was an early product back then. Since we acquired Heroku, we've also added another marketplace which is more focused on, I'd say, technical software solutions, which is Heroku Elements. And that way, we believe we can create value for Salesforce customers by offering solutions of trusted partners, whether they're a portfolio company of ventures or not, gain access to the best innovation, and then the partners of Salesforce and Salesforce Ventures can sell to a large customer base that are kind of like prepped in terms of like wanting a certain solution. They can easily search for it, and then it's a kind of like a plug and play solution, which is great. It really helps for as a very efficient and scalable go-to-market channel. So it drives down your customer acquisition cost, which is really, really great. It adds incremental value, and it's kind of unique in terms of the the buy-in that you can create with customers that are already familiar with our ecosystem.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it all seems very symbiotic. So, a little bit back to Salesforce Ventures. With over 300 companies invested, you have had the opportunity to see great and terrible pitches. In Bossa Nova, this is also very common. Thus, from what I gather, as is usual when people are trying to communicate, what I see is a great challenge for founders is to be able to understand during the pitch, which without the pressure, what the investors are listening as opposed to what the founder is saying, and to pivot if necessary. On this matter, Noe, what are your suggestions for a great startup pitch to an investor?
Yeah, I really like your point about pivot, and I think it is probably the most valuable thing to do. It's also the hardest to get right because, especially when now in this current environment, a lot of it is over video. It's sometimes hard to read the body language and the feedback from your audience. But in terms of the great startup pitches that I've seen, think about it this way. You know, the stuff that we do is we speak with a lot of different companies, so multiple pitches per day. And with that in mind, it becomes really important to kind of try and stand out. So one is be super energetic, right? You want to kind of make sure that your audience is comfortable, they like you, and that you come across as like, hey, I'm like, I have good energy, and I love this business that I'm doing. Um, and I think in the pitch, it's really important to like structure it such that it becomes easily digestible. So generally, what I like seeing is a very clear problem statement about what is the issue that you are addressing. Um, and that closely follows the mission. So we are on a mission to offer better solutions for X because of this problem that we're solving. Um, I think third, depending on kind of the stage of the company, team is critical, and you want to build a story around that. So talk about your previous experiences that have led to you founding this company, and then also address how you've thought about building the team. So what talent have you added to the team in order to be successful in building your business? And I think then it's very important to show that you have traction. But it really depends on the stage of the business in terms of how you show it. So one is, say, I could name an example about an open source company, open source software, where it's important that it's not necessarily about the revenue at an early stage. It's more about, am I building a community? So are my downloads actually going up? My users on whichever platform, are they exponentially increasing? Because that actually shows that you're creating something that has product market fit. That is what you're looking for at an early stage. Secondly, probably also at a slightly later stage, it becomes more about the numbers. You want to show like certain key metrics that you're optimizing for, and can talk about, which is what investors care about. And then to back up those numbers, it's about customer success stories. So it's always helpful to have certain testimonials in there about, hey, we're selling to the CIO of this large bank, and he or she is really excited about our solution, and this is how we've sold the solution to them. And I think actually going back to your earlier point about pivot, what I try to do, and I think a founder will do as well, is do your prep work. So know who you're going to be speaking with, know what they have been doing before, and how you then can adapt your pitch to make sure that it sticks. I think that is a key point there.
Cool. So I'm gonna go a little bit off road here and ask you something that is a curiosity of mine.
Sure.
All these aspects that you mentioned are quite key uh, team and problem and etc. and so on. What would you have to say about timing? Have you had any experience of a great company, a great idea that you analyzed and said, yeah, that's just not the right time, and maybe a year or two or so later, you saw such a company, such a solution being great and being successful and so on?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It's we come across that quite a bit because we want to make sure that we're basically not missing a really great company, even though it's early. And so you try to build a relationship. We might not be as relevant for a company currently at the seed stage, but in a year's time, we want to make sure that we get access to them because they've reached kind of the Series A stage. Um, and when I think about timing, is you have to balance distraction versus building a relationship. Because distraction is always bad. At the seed stage, you're still building the product. You're going out to your customers first. Now, what I say is try to be selective about taking certain meetings with investors, but also think about the broader picture. What I've seen recently actually is people getting a lot of inbounds, and they're saying like, "Hey, we're heads down building product, but so we're not really taking any meetings. However, if you are very interested, we would be happy to have a short chat and then see if you can potentially introduce us to either potential customers or talent. Because at the early stage, you're always looking to still build your team and you're looking for customers. So that I think that is a creative way to still build that initial engagement. Um, and they can also provide introductions to like seed stage firms, right? So that's one way to think about it. But in the end, it's like being selective. You don't want to waste anyone's time, but also really think about, hey, what is the broader picture? If I believe in, or if I wanted to partner up with this firm down the line, maybe it's good to start building a relationship early on.
Okay, I totally agree with you. So now a little bit about the Brazilian market, and now you're talking to the Brazilian startups. So Brazil can be considered a big market. Often, a 200 million people population will make lots of founders lazy about going global. However, if the ambition, if the dream is truly big enough, founders will push and face this challenge. Barriers are many. There are cultural differences, market specificities, language, distance, and so on. Still, lots of Brazilian startups are seeking to go global. Being in the UK and having such a broad experience with startups after Series A, what are your suggestions for an international strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really like it. I actually lived during my studies. I lived in Brazil and Rio de Janeiro for a while, and yeah, it's Brazil is a huge market, right? Large single market. The language, the culture is, there are differences, but everyone is Brazilian, which is really cool. I really like that. I think as you think about going global, it is valuable to the extent that the market is multiples bigger outside of Brazil still, given that it's global, than staying just focused on your own market. But you have to be, I think, careful and really do your research about, is the issue that we're addressing or the market opportunity that we're addressing in Brazil, does it exist outside of Brazil? An example, I think, in fintech, at least in the case of Europe versus US, some issues that startups are solving for in Europe do not even exist in the US, so they're not as relevant. So really do your research up front. And then secondly is around talent. You mentioned the cultural, the language barriers. I think they are there to an extent, but I actually think that Brazilians can easily work with, get along with other cultures, which is fine, as long as you can, yeah, bridge the language barrier. And we're actually seeing much more distributed companies. So hiring global talent is getting much easier and is important because you want to make sure that you have boots on the ground in those geographies that you're expanding to. Um, I also wanted to touch on, yeah, I think investors are very important. You want to, when you're starting out in Brazil, it's important to have investors on your cap table with local knowledge and a network, right? As you then think about going global, you might want to look at adding investors to your cap table that have international expertise and a network, such that you can more easily expand into another country. Um, and I think there's a lot of interest in Brazilian companies because there's a lot of talent there with great solutions that also are applicable to any sort of international market. I think lastly is when you think about customers, you want to think about, am I landing customers in Brazil with international operations, so foreign operations? If you have that, which that is really powerful because you're selling to potentially a local business division, and it's much easier to then upsell, cross sell into an international business division. And that way you can start to build a customer base outside of Brazil, customer logos, which then kind of like shows that you're proving that there is demand for the solution outside of your domestic market, and it makes it much easier to then expand further and build skill.
Okay. So I have to ask, can you speak Portuguese?
Pouco.
Great. Would you have a Salesforce case of a startup which has gone global? I mean, besides Salesforce itself, a startup that you invested in Series A before it went global and had a huge success in that journey.
Yeah. There. I think there are a lot of examples, but I'll pick one. On Fido, which is essentially an ID verification business for fintech companies. Started out as a relatively local small business in the UK, but then and had some like several local banks that they were selling to. When they started landing larger customers, your or international banks, they had that kind of like validation of like, hey, this is a solution that I can use. They handle sensitive data, right? Very personal, including like video, photos of customers. If you can then land a large logo with those international operations, you can start building a big business, large contracts. You validate one global bank, the others will likely follow, or your story becomes much more plausible for them.
Great. Well, Noe, I think these are all the questions that I had for you today. It was a great pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you for all the knowledge, all the experience. Salesforce Ventures is an impressive venture capital firm. Your results are great. Your numbers are great. Your experience is great. I hope we will have another opportunity to talk more about these themes and get together somehow. If you have any last comments to our audience and maybe to someone watching, please feel free to.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was great to be speaking with you, Antonio. And I think we should definitely have another catch up at some point in the future. I think like the last thing I wanted to mention is we don't yet have people on the ground locally in Brazil, but obviously I know the market a little bit, and I'm very excited about the startup ecosystem. So we're more and more looking to potentially invest in companies there. So if there's anything you like, if anyone wants to reach out, please feel free to do so, and we will be sure to take a look and get back to you.
Well, I will make sure that I get my startups such an information that you guys will be coming here, will be looking for startups, and probably maybe Bossa Nova will be a pipe to Salesforce Ventures.
Yeah.
So yeah, and count on us. We are partners of Salesforce here in Brazil if you want to.
That's amazing. That's great. Thanks for having me, Antonio.
Really. Great. Our pleasure. So hope to talk to you soon.
That's great.
Bye.
Bye.